episode of Movie Night. I am Alexander Pacillas, your co-host and creative director of Inpursuitofnothing.
And I'm Carter Thomas, your other co-host, stuck inside his house.
Yes, we're stuck inside our house, so we're doing this remotely. This is the first time we're doing this for an episode in our own homes. I am sitting in bed right now. This is great.
Yeah, I am sitting on my kitchen table bench. It's very comfortable. I have no back support. My bad posture is really shining through right now.
Excellent. And we do have somebody in the chat room today. We have kind of a new member of IPN. He's not really new. He's actually been with us for a while, but he's a crucial member of the team. He's Casey Coffman. Hi, Casey.
Hi guys, how's it going?
It's
not my real voice.
Great.
Hi, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Oh, you fooled me.
I got everyone.
I know.
I will never believe you.
I thought the voice you had been using this whole time was your fake voice, and you just revealed your real one just now. But I can see that you've made a fool of me, and I don't like it.
My specialty.
Okay. All right. Well, Casey, you brought a movie for us today. Do you want to say what movie that you brought?
I did. I brought the 2014 Christopher Nolan classic, Interstellar.
Is this a classic? Is this
I think it's a modern classic. I don't really know. I consider it a classic, so there you go.
Okay. I was like, wait, did that happen? And I was unaware.
I don't know of any formal classic verification process for movies, so I'm just gonna freeball it there.
I feel like it needs to be at least 20 years old.
Oh, never mind then.
But I mean, if it's gonna follow its own rules, the movie's 3 hours long, so that means it's like 50 years old in interstellar time. So
exactly.
So therefore, it's a classic.
You know something funny? I'm a freaking idiot, and I actually, I did, at least on the task cam, I wasn't recording like the beginning part. So we got my voice, we just didn't get it on the task cam. But now we're getting it. So sorry about that, AJ.
Oh my god.
I don't care. I'm gonna leave. I don't care about cutting that out. I'm gonna leave that in. Like the quality's not that bad.
Good.
Yeah.
The audience should
normally
know that
AJ does this,
incompetent.
but AJ's not here because we're all quarantined. So you'll have to deal with our bullshit. Okay, back to the subject at hand. Casey, if you want to talk a little bit about like your history with the movie, like why you chose to share this movie with us, and like when you first saw it, and your thoughts on it, and all that.
Yeah, so I started like really getting into film towards the end of high school / like early college. I started taking more film classes. That's when I like started to really love the art form of filmmaking. And this movie premiered in November 4th, 2014, which was my sophomore year of college when I was in my initial intro to visual and media studies class. So this hit me at the perfect time. But what I really loved about it is how scientifically accurate it was, but how artistically beautiful it was, like at the same time, and how those worked together. All of the different performances I thought were fantastic. It's a shame that no one got nominated for it because when it comes to film, I think the number one objective of any film is for the audience to feel the emotions that the characters are feeling at the same time. That transports you into that like space. And I thought that the emotional performances from each of the characters in the film did that and then some. And yeah, that is my main reasoning for picking this film. It's my
really
favorite
good
movie.
Reason.
Oh, of all time.
Really good explanation.
Yeah.
Oh, word.
Yeah,
Word
no,
up,
that was
dude.
good. And you saw this
Yeah.
in theaters, like when it came out.
Yeah, I saw this in theaters a few times, and I actually hadn't seen it for a few years, so it was really nice to go back and rediscover it, I guess, with a new lens of, joining IPN and going through the whole process with it, and then also reading up on some fun facts about it.
It's always like the best parts.
Newfound appreciation.
And And Alex,
Yeah,
you've had you seen this
I
movie
saw it
before?
once
Before
in
Casey brought it?
theaters, and it was one of those things where during the time, I don't feel like I was well versed, or as well versed in like film literature as I am now. Um, I definitely grew a lot, and so like when I watched it, like it was complex, and it was uh had like Casey, like how you said, it had a lot of like scientific accuracies to it, and it was very grounded. I remember even talking with like my astronomy teacher at the time, who was talking about that movie and how like accurately portrayed like a black hole and a wormhole and all of those things about it. So it was actually kind of cool to like see it and see a Hollywood film like do something accurate with it. Um, and so I had that
Yeah,
appreciation for it as well.
definitely.
And of course, I'm a big Chris Nolan fan as well. Um, yeah, it's like
Oh, definitely.
I think like after I've like I still like enjoy watching his movies, but I've like grown fonder of like other people, and I try to explore. So it's just like I'm not like gung ho over Chris Nolan, but I still like he's still one of those like top caliber people that I like. Oh, he's coming out with a new movie, so like I have to check it out. Well, it's similar like it,
He's like your fun uncle. You know, he'll always be there, drinking, having
drinking
a good
his
time,
tea.
showing up
Yeah.
new things, but never really the head of the house.
Yeah, Chris Nolan seems like he drinks. Just kidding. I don't know. I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
He's from across
He's
the
a
pond,
Brit.
right?
He's a
He's a
yeah.
British
You
fella.
are right. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Well, this
yeah.
was
I was
my
gonna say
first
it's your.
time seeing the
I
movie,
knew it was your first time,
and
Curtis. So, what was your thought, thoughts
Ooh,
about it?
well, and it's funny because usually I mean, this is the only Christopher Nolan movies I've seen are Following, which I don't remember, Memento,
Wow.
and this Interstellar. I haven't seen, yeah, I haven't seen Inception. I haven't seen any of the Dark Knights, just because I think part of me is like this pretentious contrarian fella who's like, oh, I'm not gonna
Oh yeah,
see
yeah,
a Christopher Nolan movie
yeah.
yeah.
because
You are.
everyone else says it's good. But then it's also like it's but then then I watch Interstellar. Like I liked it. I liked Interstellar, um, but it's not one that I would like buy or like it's. I'd watch it every like 5 to 7 years. I think. Um,
So 1 hour of time on Miller's Planet.
Wow. Okay.
exactly. Exactly.
Look at all that work.
Boom. There you go. And I guess my biggest qualm with the movie is that it's just too long. I'd say that's the biggest my biggest issue with it is that it's almost 3 hours long, and I don't feel like it needs to be that. But we can dive deeper into that when
Yeah, when
we
we get there.
when we go through it. But I liked it. I give it.
All right.
I didn't
Well,
dislike it.
okay. That's
I you know
that's
Matthew did a great job.
well. So yeah. Then if that's the case,
Mhm.
then Casey, do you want to kind of like run through the plot? This can also be for like if people haven't seen the movie and they're interested or anything like that. So like, kind of talk about it in detail.
Yeah, so the plot, real simple kind of description of it, follows Cooper, who is Matthew McConaughey.
Hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful Matthew.
Right.
Chrysler Matthew, yes, that's how we know him. Anyways, he is on Earth as a farmer. The year is 2067, and there's essentially a new kind of dust bowl starting. It's called the Blight. And what it does is it has killed off pretty much every crop on Earth except for corn. And eventually it will kill off corn as well, so there will be no food, and it'll also make the Earth uninhabitable. That is only known to the highbrow scientists and everything, not the mass public. But anyways, it
Right.
follows him. He used to fly in the NASA program, but had been like discontinued or ejected from it or whatnot. Um, and he comes across a secret NASA base, which is undergoing what they call the Lazarus mission. And the Lazarus missions are a plan B to save humanity outside of saving the planet, which is finding new planets to colonize that are out there in the universe.
Yeah. That
Um,
that was like the
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
that
another
was actually one of the things. Like,
galaxy.
because I remember as I was watching it, like he had like he. It started off with like where he had like a dream and he was like crashing or something like that. And he woke up
Yeah.
and then that was that. And then I did they ever say, maybe I missed it? Did they ever say that he flew for NASA before he went to NASA to the Lazarus
Yes.
Project? Did they
Yeah.
talk about the school
So
teachers? Did I miss that or something?
the it wasn't really with the school teachers. It was the first time he came into that meeting room with Michael Caine and Anne Hathaway, and that dream he had at the beginning was like his past, essentially. Like he
Right.
flew with NASA. He never really got into the atmosphere, like into outer space. He
Hmm.
said that he flown like in this. He barely. I think his quote in the movie was like he barely got to the stratosphere. But then Michael Caine says, "You're the best pilot like we've ever
I think he
known."
said he,
So he did fly for them previous.
dude, I thought that scene was so funny because it's like he just like stumbled upon your shit, and obviously we find out later in the movie why Michael Caine asked Matthew. But I thought it was so when I didn't know that information, I was just like, oh yeah, this guy just came on and he's just like,
Yeah.
you gotta join my team, Matthew. You gotta, you're the best pilot I ever had. It's like he
I
hasn't flown a plane in like 10 years, but
no.
when he goes into space, he
Yeah,
just knows everything
Uh,
on what to do. Like he
Lauren
is
was
fine.
watching
He is
like the
just
movie kind of over
fine.
my shoulder a little bit, and and she said that she's like, "Don't astronauts train for like years to go into space?" I was like, "Yeah, but he flew for NASA. I sure like I that was the one thing about like the if
they
I
did
were
not make it
to
very clear. That is for
well,
sure.
it's not even just that like that some a little bit, which granted is just like there's some things that like the audience doesn't need to know. You know, it's just like that's one of them. That's just like the audience can kind of piece it together and just be like, okay, accept that this is the way it is. However, the movie does kind of do this thing, and it does it like kind of throughout where it has a lot of verbal exposition, and it has a lot of like explaining like these are the rules and this is the way things are, and then this is happening, and like it's like everything is kind of explained because I don't know if it's because they're having to make sure the audience gets it,
Yes.
which I guess again it's one of those things like I understand that you kind of have to treat your audience like you have to hold their hand a little bit, but there's some things where it's just like they say certain details that I'm like I don't know if we really needed to know that. I think we could have pieced that together, or I don't know what that how that provides any information. Like
Hmm.
uh what John Lithgow's character Donald, is that his name? I think is his name.
I believe so.
Like
McConaughey's father-in-law.
yeah, it was his
Yeah.
father-in-law, and I was just like, it's such a small detail that it really doesn't make any difference, but it's just an example of like, oh, like why was that his father-in-law? Like, why do we need to know that that was his father-in-law? Like, why couldn't that have been his father? I don't know. It's just like that. That's not like a nitpicky thing. It's just again, like I said, an example. It was just something I thought about when they said it. Um,
Yeah.
but like it just kind of happens a little bit down the road where it's just like
I
I
don't know.
feel like the audience could like can like figure it out and they don't need to explain it. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can speak a little bit to the explaining of different materials. This movie does for this is for like the wider audience. It deals with a lot of themes on wormhole theory and theoretic, which is a theoretical passage in space time that allows shortcuts with travel within the universe.
Hmm.
Um, but and the theory of relativity and whatnot, which is popularized by Einstein back in 1915, which was about the 100-year anniversary was when this movie came out. So fun fact there.
Oh, nice.
But Christopher Nolan's like number one objective when making this film was to take a path that he felt that he could get across to the audience and not lose them. So I think the over explaining was him kind
Hmm.
of being even more safe than sorry with that.
Yeah,
Um, it
and
takes away
yeah,
from the overall like punch of the film, but it also like makes it a little bit
yeah,
more.
It was easier for like the
Yeah.
everyday audiences to digest because I feel like if they left things a little more vague and open, like it probably I feel like it'd be because Interstellar is kind of like a very divided film. I've noticed like I've met people who like love it or hate it. Like I haven't really met a middle ground of people, and so I feel like if it went even more
It
into
might
like
be
a
even more
vague
divided.
territory,
Yeah, it's
then
polarizing.
especially since especially since it is working, yeah, because it is working with like legitimate like scientific, like who was their consultant for the whole thing,
Dr. Kip Thorne.
Dr. Oh gosh, d- 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 Kip Kip Thorne, yeah, Kip Thorne, yeah, right up here, looking at his name. And so, when you're dealing with like actual science, that I didn't fucking understand, but I really
Yeah.
appreciated that they explained
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. That's just one thing that.
It would have been cool to have something, you know, that I also could have figured out on my own. But it's like I'm like it's still science
Yeah,
fiction.
yeah,
Like I'm
and
still just
and
in it
that's
for
all
the
I kept
ride.
thinking about is just like I guess what I kept thinking, and this is probably just me, it, like the way I like digest things like that is whenever they explain something like that, I know that they're explaining it because they're explaining for the general audience, and so like that almost like distracted me a little bit. But
Hmm.
Yeah.
that's something I can't give a fault for. That's like a me problem. So it was just something that like I kind of noticed about it. That was like, oh, it's like it's really trying to cater to the general audience, but it's a very dense film. It's as dense as the black hole. Well, that's
Exactly.
not really dense actually.
Very dense.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But
Um,
okay. Sorry, that was a
So
side tangent.
you're good.
Um.
it was
Oh
about the
yeah, I
movie,
know.
so we're on
Okay,
track.
so where did we leave off?
So he was a farmer, and he then all of a sudden
He's
joins the
in
Lazarus
space.
program.
Oh yeah, yeah. Which I do think that's actually funny that it was.
Oh, and he has two kids.
Yes.
This is very
Oh yeah,
important. He's
Murph.
got two kids.
Murph and
Two
Tom.
kids. The son, who's the redheaded stepchild, except he's not a redhead and he's not a stepchild.
Yes.
And then there's Murph, who's an actual redhead, but we care about her.
I made that when he was saying goodbye. I was like he's trying to be like Murph gets mad at him because he doesn't know like when he's coming back or if he is coming back. It's like that whole thing. And then
Yeah.
like he's just like don't do this, Murph, blah blah blah, whatever.
Hmm.
And then he goes out and hugs Tom. I'm like, you don't love Tom as much as Murph. Like that's very clear.
Yes, definitely
I
very
just thought that
clear.
was funny.
I don't. I didn't.
I,
I didn't get those vibes. I didn't get those vibes. I just think they're in like a different time where it's like all the men really had to
yeah,
just
that's
kind of
true.
step up on their masculinity. So I think they just don't really know how to express those emotions. And even John Lithgow
Yeah.
said he's like, "Oh, Tom's gonna be fine," and and then you see later like with all the video chats, like Tom is the only one who like actively keeps up with it.
Right.
So I don't know. I didn't sense any lack of love. I just think
I
the
was
love
I was
is
being
different
being a
between the
little
kids.
exaggerating, but you know what I mean.
Oh
Okay.
well, I'll keep my
Please
points to
don't.
myself.
That's what this whole thing is for.
Yeah.
I think he does have a stronger connection to Murph. That's definitely like shown throughout the film. Whether it doesn't take away from the love for the son. I think but they're definitely highlighting the daughter
Hmm.
father kind of dynamic there, and I think it also speaks a little bit more to Matthew McConaughey's two different drives in the film, which is kind of overarching for all of humanity, which is the difference between being realistic or down to earth or doing what you're told, which is the farming side of him,
Hmm.
because Earth needs more farmers, as they say in the parent teacher conference, and they need more food because that's the biggest struggle for humanity for the current moment.
Hmm.
But then there's also his exploratory or dreamer kind of wanderlust type of part of his personality, which is like always looking forward, and that's what is kind of shown within Murph and
Yeah. Like
Tom, and he definitely caters more to the Murph side of his personal
yeah.
or his personality in that.
Like like curiosity was like a big trait
Mm-hmm.
in him, and it was like to the point where like it also like got him into trouble, especially with when he talked with Murph when he was like, oh, think about like the time like when I come back, like, hey, we might be the same age. It's just like, oh, you said the wrong thing there. Also, what's funny
Yeah.
is that
I know.
yeah.
I was just like, why'd you say that? I was like,
Also, a
why
bit
did you say that?
later. Well, this is maybe I'll save this to when we get a bit further. But there's this little detail that I wrote down uh, about like when Murph is the same age. But so we can keep going though.
Okay.
Uh, here
So
it
we're
goes.
at the Lazarus program, and Lazarus is a little background, has biblical kind of roots to it, because Lazarus, and this is me looking it up because I'm not a religious person, but he was raised from the dead by Jesus
Hmm.
after 4 days of being dead, to create more of a fellowship.
One
Yeah,
more than Jesus was dead,
and
by the way.
and I think that Lazarus like goes in with Earth dying and essentially being reborn in space in another place. So that's kind of the nail on the head with that.
Yeah.
Um, and as they're explaining the different planets, the program that was in place, there were 12 different astronauts that went through a wormhole that appeared next to Saturn to go to these 12 different planets to see which one is livable and then report back so they can move humanity there. I did the calculations when they said it, and the wormhole appeared in 2019. So I think the government's hiding something because that obviously has happened in real life now.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. We've got. That's when everything started going to shit. No, I'm just
Exactly.
I think it is really funny about like the name Lazarus. It's it's kind of like a foreshadow of like what like the whole actual plan is.
Hmm.
Uh, which I don't know. I give it away until we get further down, but like it's a It's like the whole name of the project is a foreshadow, and so like if you kind of piece that together, then you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I know like this is like how this project is supposed to go down or something. But
Yeah.
obviously we'll get there a little bit later. But so maybe we can fast forward a little bit. So like when they actually go into space and they actually like are on the mission, and then like they go into the wormhole or like they're approaching the wormhole,
Yeah.
like that was like one of the I remember seeing that in theaters. That was like one of the coolest looking things like to see on visually on screen. Yeah, or like even when
When they're
they're
like
just
in the
approaching
wormhole.
it, like there's just this like this warping effect that just from what I remember, I wasn't able to search up any like trivia. I just didn't have enough time. But I remember like the just to create those images, like they had to well, first off, have like hundreds of people working on it just to create the visuals of it for in post, and then like have
Mm-hmm.
it's like they had to have a whole new program just to process the images, and it's just like insane, like the amount of like technology that went into making this visual effect, and it's breathtaking every
Oh
time.
yeah, I read that. Oh yeah, I read that like sometimes a
Yeah,
single frame took 8 hours to
Yeah.
render, and
Said it
I was
totaled
like,
up to 800 terabytes
God,
of data in order to
goddamn,
do
dude.
just like the wormhole slash the black hole in some of those frames.
man, fuck that.
Yeah.
Oh
But
my
what's
God,
really
dude.
interesting about it, so that CGI process with the new system was from different theoretical equations that the theoretical physicist, the Kip Thorne or Kip Thorpe, I don't know what's his last name, Thorne. Okay, Kip Thorne
Thorn.
um, provided that team to create that software, and actually from the creation of it, he published three new scientifically like published papers following this. So this movie helped create more scientific theories and kind of laws and stuff into modern society. So I like that. That was cool.
Yeah, I think I remember
That.
like that was part of the thing they read about too was was that and like the equations that they applied for it. So it's like it's cool that they applied so many like scientific facts to it, just to like tell their story. And I don't know, I just it's what I made a
Mm-hmm.
note was that like this movie's like really, it's really blurring the line of like science fact and science fiction, because like obviously there's like still some science fiction elements because we don't really know how certain things work, but it's
Yeah.
like it's one of the more grounded ones, uh where it's like you kind of don't know if like, wait, is this real? Can this actually, is this all this like can actually happen, or is this just again part of science fiction? Because it's like you think about like Star Trek or anything like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they they make predictions off of like what they know, and it's like, is this that, or is this like actually what happens? So it's just kind of really interesting to like to get a movie like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and because this movie took like a while to even get out, because it was originally announced in
Yeah.
2006 with Spielberg to direct it, and yeah, Christopher Nolan's brother like wrote the first few drafts of it, and then Hollywood happens and Spielberg got busy, and so what is
Yeah.
it,
It
Jonathan
was
Nolan?
Jonathan Nolan.
I wish I remembered his name, but he was like, oh, he's like, oh, my brother Chris should
yeah,
do
that's how it
this.
sounds.
And so then Chris like took the script, and basically what I read is the only thing he really kept from Jonathan's draft was like all the stuff
Mm.
before
Yeah.
they went into space, and everything else after that was like Chris. And so I'm wondering
Mm.
what the rest of that
I don't
stuff
know.
Yeah.
It was, I don't
What
know.
I kind of read up onto was, yeah, Jonathan Nolan. He studied like the theory, like relativity at Caltech. They brought in a former astronaut actually on set for the entirety of the filming, kind of as a liaison. And they studied NASA documentaries in writing the script. That first like hour on Earth, like you mentioned, was pretty much all of Jonathan Nolan's, but then Jonathan and Kip kind of brainstormed ideas, and Christopher kind of filtered through and like did the rest of the script on his own via their like expertise, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. Also, Cars, no, I'm pretty sure Jonathan Nolan actually has an American accent. I'm just letting you know that.
We'll just make everyone British.
He has
Yeah, because both
he
him and
has an
Chris are
American
like dual
accent.
citizens, and John like lives primarily in America, and so I think he has like an American accent.
Someone should have like told me that
I've
30
only heard him
minutes
talk
ago
once, so it's one of those things. I'm like,
when I
I don't
was
know
doing.
how like if he still has like a little bit of a British accent, but I don't know. I just thought that was a little fun fact that I wanted to share. Um, okay, so they go into the wormhole. Um, what's her name? Bran shakes hands with an alien, with them. Uh, and then they arrive in the galaxy. There's what?
There's there's Rimley, Brand, then the other white
Spoiler.
guy who
The
dies.
bearded dude from Hunger
Spoiler.
Games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's how I knew him. I'm like,
I don't-
why does this guy look so familiar,
yeah,
and
he
why
just has
do I not
he
like
just
him?
has a punchable face. You know what
That's
I'm saying?
why.
No, I don't know why I can't remember his like the actor's name, which is bugging me. But whatever.
That's alrighty. That's what IMDb's for.
I
We'll
know,
just call
but
him. We'll just
I'm not ready.
the audience can look it up. They can do some work
So
while
yeah,
they're
and then
listening.
they go down to, who's the first person's planet that they go to?
Miller's Planet.
Miller's planet, and then yeah, you wanna
Miller's Planet.
take it from
Yeah.
So they get down to Miller's Planet, and the dilemma
That
they
was a
have
trippy
with
one.
Miller's Planet is it is so close to what they call as Gargantua, which is this black hole in this part of the universe in which they're trying to colonize. And Miller's Planet is so close to Gargantua that 1 hour of time on that planet is equivalent to 7 years on Earth. So, yes. So they
So they
try
think.
to get down there, figure out what's going on. They've been given info that like there's water and that life can be sustainable on there. But as they get down there, they find that that is not the case, and they get rickrolled by a tsunami.
Yeah.
And yeah,
The biggest tsunami, like the
yes,
planet's all, it's just water that they
Yeah,
can walk on.
which is
It's
so
very
weird that it's like
shallow,
it's really.
and
I mean,
then
I
like
guess
just
it's
this.
because all the water's going in the wave, but it's just like it's really shallow. But then you see this gigantic wave. I'm like, wait, someone what? That, but it makes sense, I guess, if all the water is there. I just always thought that that was weird. Uh, but that was the other thing about it too, where it's just again, it's another one of those things where like they just kind of say things and it's a nitpicky thing, but it's like when Coop is like he's like, oh, he's trying to say where like the mountains or where like the hills or something like that. He's like, that's not a mountain, like that's a wave. It's just like, okay, you could you didn't need to say that's a wave. You could have said that's not a mountain.
yeah.
It's similar to like Star Wars, like the oh that's no moon. It's just like okay, got it. Like the surprise of seeing that
That's
it's a
no moon.
wave, I think would have like hit a bit harder for like the audience. It's just it's a little too much like explanation.
I agree in that instance. If
Yeah,
it's like you're trying to explain what the theory of relativity is, that needs some explaining.
yeah,
But
but I can figure out it's a wave. I
a
don't know. Again,
wave,
that's such a
I think,
nitpicky
is
thing, but I think it's something that like you're taking away from the impact that you can give the audience by seeing something like that, you know? So
yeah, them discovering it on their own.
yeah,
Hmm.
whatever. That's a little detail, but yeah, and so
So yeah,
they get hit by
they
that wave.
bearded Hunger Games guy dies from the wave. Uh,
Which is stupid
I
because he had
know.
so much time to get in. He wasn't stuck because Anne Hathaway is looking for the wreckage of Miller's ship to get the data, and like she like falls underneath some of it, so she can't get up. So the fucking TARS, their robot, has to go save her. And meanwhile, Hunger
Yeah,
Games
because he was
guy is just
closer to
like
the ship. He
standing
could have gotten in the
and
ship
waiting, and
while the robot went to go get Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I know. I thought that was so frustrating because it's just like oh, okay, you're gonna die because Chris Nolan wants you to die, and he can't think of a sensible way to do it. I don't. I was just. I'm like that was pointless. Like he had so much fucking
Yeah,
time. Stupid.
he
Anyway.
whatchamacallit? Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyways,
Well,
um,
they when they get hit by the wave, like the ship gets like flooded and stuff like that, so we have to wait for it to drain,
yeah,
and then they like another wave's coming up, so they decide to just fucking gung ho and get back up to the what's it called again? The endurance.
They
Yeah,
and
shred. They shred that gnar,
before we
dude. They're
move on,
like,
I have a conspiracy theory.
oh, okay.
Did read this up though, but as so the guy's name is Doyle. I now see it. The character's name,
Oh, there we go.
Hunger Games guy. Anyways, he's presumed drowned, but his suit
ah, that's
appears intact when the ship eventually leaves, meaning it's remotely possible he could have survived the impact and is merely unconscious somewhere.
Oh, that sucks.
Given the extreme time dilation
that
on the
sucks.
planet, a rescue is possible because where the film ends, it's only 9 hours in relative time. So they could have done a rescue mission at the end, and it would have only been 9 hours after that wave impacted
Hmm,
where they were at the end of the movie.
that's hopeful.
Boom.
But like all the other waves that would
Yeah,
have
I
came
mean,
by
maybe he
then.
like used his back hair and made a raft of sea turtles, and he just shredded the gnar afterwards. But I don't know. A couple references there.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah, a few.
yeah,
Uh, no, I did think it was funny that after they left, like it just ended with like a shot of his like body floating in the water. It's like we didn't need to see that, but okay, like that was a choice. But okay, and the one thing that I no, I thought it was funny too.
I thought
That's
it
why
was
I was
funny.
like, I don't know what you're making me feel here, Chris. Like this is I'm just laughing at this,
yeah.
but okay, so they go up, which kind of messes with me a little bit because I didn't feel like they were there for an hour. Yet they go up and they go back up and they say it's been like 23 years or something like that. For
Yes.
Oh, I thought they said like because they asked Tars how long, and I thought he said 45 minutes to an hour. So I
The
thought they were only there
45
for
minutes to
15
an hour
minutes.
was the time it would take for the engines to like unflood essentially and for them to fire up. So
See, that's
the
really
total time spent on the planet, and it doesn't have to like necessarily make sense with obviously what you see on screen, but they spent 3 hours and 17 minutes on the planet, which translates to that 23 years, 4 months, and eight
and
days.
yeah, and that's like, but the thing is like when I was watching
Okay.
it, I never got the feeling that like that amount of time passed, and
No,
so that's why I was a little confused.
No. That was kind of a theme with the movie, though. Well, not a theme, but because like before when they go down for the long nap, that's like a 2 year thing, and they don't do like a 2 years later type of thing. Like
Yeah,
they go down, and then in the next scene, like they're awake. So they kind of need to like Chris Nolan doesn't hold your hand in that sense by telling you how much time has passed. It's
right.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, then I guess
I
they're
mean,
done.
I don't know. It's one of those things that like kind of threw me off about it, and I was a little confused because just because of like, oh yeah, I know this whole movie like time is weird, but it's just like we as the audience still kind of need to like understand it, and if you don't, I don't know. It's a thing that confused me a little bit, but I
it
still
seemed
like
like it
I
was
s-
like 10 minutes and
yeah.
then it was an hour for it to boot up,
y-
when the 30 seconds of screen time of them running 200 yards to a broken ship ended up being 2 hours in actuality instead of the 5 minutes we saw.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was just a little note. But
Yeah.
they go back up. Romley's been there for 23 years, and then
Oh god.
Coop
Sad,
Coop
sad
watches the
part.
video of 23 years of Tom and well, just Tom.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, dude, that scene
That
got
was
me.
so that was the thing that I was like,
Yeah,
um because like the acting was pretty good, but like obviously Matthew McConaughey's like performance outshined everybody's, and it was those moments and then like some other moments as well. And so that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is where like the great performance is. Where every other time it was just like, okay, yeah, people are acting normal and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
feel like this was really like
This is
the
where
strong
really
part.
it kind of sunk its
yeah,
teeth into it.
Yeah.
yeah. It got me.
For
It got me.
reference, though, looking at the Academy Awards
It's
for that year, he did not get a nomination for Best Actor, but that year was fairly stacked. We had Ed, Eddie Redmayne in Theory of Everything, who won. We
Oh
had
right.
Benedict Cumberbatch in Imitation Game. We had Bradley Cooper for American Sniper, and Michael Keaton for Birdman, and then Steve Carell as Foxcatcher. I didn't see Foxcatcher. I saw the other four
Damn.
though,
That's
and
a solid lineup.
a
yeah,
good
that year
movie.
also had Whiplash and Grand Budapest Hotel, Boyhood, so that had some pretty phenomenal films. It also was not nominated for Best Picture, so that's another reason why. But
Uh, yeah, there's some heavy hitters that year. I forgot.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
all right, well,
yeah. So he's yeah. That scene was so good because Tom Cooper's son is like he's the one leaving all the messages, and he grows up to be Casey Affleck in very poor taste, but we didn't know they didn't have the knowledge that we have now, and basically he's just giving him updates. He's like he's a teenager. He's like, oh, I met this girl named Lois, and all of a sudden he's an adult, and he's like, oh, we have a kid, and it's
yeah,
like, oh, my kid
that was
fucking
another
died.
thing too, where I was just like, they explained that their child died without like saying it. Like it was done through like the performance, and it was done through like verbal cues and just like other things that I'm like, oh shit, like their child died. And they didn't really say. I don't think I remember he said why, but it was just like what because of like the dust and everything like that because of like the climate and shit. I was like,
Yeah,
oh okay, that's one of
inhalation.
those examples of like, see, like the audience can figure it out that like that the child died through like other ways to say it that sound more natural than just like coming out and say it. It's like, well, my child died because of this. It's like, no, everyone in that universe knows why that child would have died. So how would they say it in order for the audience to understand? And
Yeah.
that's what I feel like that they did with that.
Mm-hmm.
Murph.
Yeah. And then
Murph.
Murph leaves a message because, oh my god, dude, because in the before Matthew went to space, he's like, "Oh, maybe I'll come back and we're the same age." And so Murph leaves a message on her birthday because she is now the same age as when he went up to space, and she's still pissed off that he's in space. She has not let go of any of that anger, which I felt
Yeah, I
was
agree.
a little
Yeah.
stupid, but but then we find out that she's working for Dr. Brand to like help this move forward. So I kind of let go of that a little bit. She's like, oh, she's taking that anger
Yes.
so she can get her dad home. So I was like, okay, you're not just sitting around doing nothing. Oh, and Donald died,
John
played by,
Lithgow,
we didn't even mention,
wonderful
played by the
actor.
great John Lithgow.
I think I mentioned that.
Wonderful actor, great performance.
Rip Donald.
Rip. Rip
And
Donald.
then
Also, just really quick
But-
side note. She said like, "Oh, when I'm like, I'm the same age, like today's my birthday, and I'm the same age that you were when you left." And I was like, Matthew McConaughey was 35. No, that doesn't make sense. Because
Hey, these dust
okay,
bowls
I'm
age
just saying
you.
like,
They
yeah,
age you.
no, add maybe
Well-
15 or 10 years to that.
I mean, he would have been more like 40 because it was the 24 years later, but then you got to think of like the travel time through space outside of just that planet.
See, but that's
So, like it
the
took
other
2
thing.
years to get to Saturn and then like other
Yeah.
stuff with that too. Yeah.
But I guess it's like that's the only because we're using the information that we're given. So it's like you
Yeah.
apply 2 years and then 23, and so it's like okay, then it's been a total of 25 years. If Murph was 10 when he left, then it's like so it's like using the information they give you. This is what they're saying, and so it's just like if they're trying to
they
assume
took a little artistic liberty on that one.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
and so that's just one of those things that like that can sometimes be like overlooked, and I think sometimes happens where like it can sometimes happen with Christopher Nolan movies where it's like you don't like there's some things that like don't really matter, but like they're plot devices that help move the movie along. But when you think about it, you're like, wait, that's kind of weird or something like that. But
Yeah.
but it works because Christopher Nolan is like a masterful director, and he like is entertaining, and he's just like so you don't think about it, like you just kind of
Hmm.
you go along for the ride. He sends you on like a ride, and you don't really have to nitpick anything.
I agree with that.
And
That-
then
yeah,
while we're receiving those
So-
messages, we get another message a couple minutes later, like a scene or two later, and find out that Dr. Brand, Michael Caine, who is the father of Anne Hathaway, who is also named Brand, so in case
it's
that was confusing, that's clarified now. He died, and I had a few notes actually because they come back after the 24 or 26 years, however many it's been. Michael Caine's already an old dude to begin with at the start. And then I have 3 notes here. I put side note. How is Michael Caine still alive? 24 years later, really? And then I put, oh, wait, there. He died 5 minutes later, so we can take an emotional hit of a character that was on screen for maybe 5 minutes in total. And then I put, oh, wait, the tragedy of it was that his life work did not get completed and he died hopeless and as a failure. Okay, that makes sense. Moving right along. So that's all I had to say on that.
That's all very accurate.
I know my favorite part was he's just like, okay, Michael Caine needs to be older.
Exactly, because
Put
his
him in a
makeup was the
wheelchair.
exact same and everything.
He had a little bit grayer hair.
Yeah.
It's just like, dang.
Uh,
Yeah, and so Murph is now working for Dr. Brand, and she points out that like there's something wrong with his like equation that he's trying to that he has been working on for years to like bring the people of Earth to this new home, and he just kind of shrugs it off. And then in the scene where he dies, Topher Grace, which is really
yeah,
weird
I
that,
know. I had the
Greg
same
fucking
thought. I was like,
Foreman just shows
like
up out of
I've seen the
nowhere? I
movie
don't know.
before, but I'm just like, wait, what the fuck? Topher Grace is in this? Like, it just really threw me off.
I'm like, what character was he? Like,
And
he just
apparently
shows
he's
up
dating Murph.
unexplained.
I don't know. Like, that was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I guess they're a couple. Like, I mean, they're acting like a couple, so okay, cool.
Yeah. But Michael Caine explains to Murph on his deathbed that he had no intention of ever bringing because there were 2 plans that they made. Plan A was to bring people from Earth to the new planet, and Plan B was to like colonize it with these eggs that they had. And Michael Caine reveals that Plan A was never really the plan. It was always to just colonize and let people die. So now Murph is extra mad because she's like, my dad left me to
Yeah.
die, and I'm
Yeah,
like, you're stupid
which
if you think that.
I mean, kind of tracing back to that Lazarus Project name. So like, if you really think about it, like he called it Lazarus for a reason because he's expecting the human race to die, and then be reborn through, uh, through I don't. I mean, I don't remember how they're saying it, but like through the eggs and everything like that through fertilization.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, when you think about how, like in the biblical sense, and how like what was it? It's like, yeah, you can tell like that he's lying the whole time. So I thought that was like a clever thing to call it. Actually, it's a good.
Yeah, and another thing to just add to elaborate. So when we mean by eggs, um, that Plan B, like Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey had hundreds of like fertilized human like eggs
Mhm.
that they took, and they were going to use that to colonize, and they were genetically and ethnically like diverse and everything, so that way they wouldn't face any normal like colonization issues or anything. So those are on the ships they're flying through space with. Um,
It's a bunch of semen. Well, not semen, eggs. Yeah.
Oh my guys, we forgot to mention how
Oh
Murph
yeah,
thinks
yeah.
there is a ghost.
In
in
the
her room
very
when she's a
beginning, Murph thinks there's a ghost trying to speak to her through her bookshelf. That sounds weird when you say it like that, but that's what's happening. And
but
that's yeah, that's how Coop finds the Lazarus Project is he sees like that there's like a pattern in like this in like the books being falling out or like dust coming down. It's like really weird, but it's like this gravity uh coordinates
gravitational
code.
anomaly kind of a thing.
Yeah, so
Is
it's just
giving him
like I was
coordinates
like,
in
oh, like that's
binary.
really weird. And like when you think about it too, it's just like when that happens and like he goes to the Lazarus Project, they like don't they like, kind of forget about it. I mean, like they come back to it, of course, but it's just like that happens and then everything else happens and the like kind of midway you're like, wasn't that kind of weird how the fuck he how the fuck he just showed up here like and you not no one's gonna explain it. I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just kind of funny that like they bring that up and then you don't get an answer till the end about it, but
Yes,
I don't know.
but we'll
It's a
we'll
good
touch
payoff.
base on it a little later once we do get to the end. But I think that
Yeah.
this movie did a great job in any
Yes.
questions they brought up at the beginning and like the first act of the film. They answered in
Yeah,
the second half, and it was a very like rewarding like viewership for people because
I
they
do
weren't
agree.
left with a
Yeah,
whole lot of questions. Like you can
yeah.
open up questions at the very end of the movie because there's not going to be another movie and it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But in terms of what they foreshadowed at the beginning, they came back around to it and explained it. So I appreciate that about the film.
Yeah, yeah. That was really good. I like that.
And well, we're coming to this part of the movie, which was for me the most frustrating. So so back up in space, Rimley, Cooper, and Brand need to decide which planet to go to. They can go to Edmund Wolf's, who Anne Hathaway has a emotional bias towards because she's in love with him, and she has a speech about how love binds everyone together. Take note of that; it's important. But then they decide to go to the other planet for I forgot what reason
Because
because
Dr.
he's
Man
still
was
transmitting
he was
data.
transmitting data, it was closer, and he was like the lead scientist of all the 12 missions.
He was the inspirer.
Okay, yeah. So they decide to
Yeah,
go
he
to his planet, which is an icy tundra.
which I thought
And so, they get into the fucking ship. They open up the cryo sleep door,
Boom.
and who
Matt
comes out?
Matt
Matt
Damon.
Damon.
At first, I was just like, "We're in the Martian again. This is happening." Um, but
Martian came after this.
well, I whatever. You
I
know
have
what?
my own opinions on The Martian, and they are against it more than they are for it. So it's unpopular. So, anyways, sorry. I'm
Oh,
giving Interstellar the credit.
I love that movie.
Anyways, continue. I apologize.
Well, no, about that though, like about that planet, I really liked the design of it. I thought it was like really interesting in comparison, of course. But like, it was one of those things where like when like the ship hits like the cloud and it breaks, again it was one of those moments where like I had to mark it down every single time but they hit the cloud and it breaks, and like as an audience member, we're like, what the fuck, that was weird. And then Coop just looks out, he's just like, a frozen cloud. It's like, yeah, I got it, Coop. Like, it's a frozen cloud. Like, stop telling me these things. I got it. But no, yes,
Oh,
you
I didn't get it.
Sorry. No, yeah, it's just one of those
But I
things
see
where
your
it's just
point.
like it
You're
happened,
mad.
and I liked the idea of like, it's like you're on an alien planet, and it's like you don't understand it, but that just happened, so you have to kind of like think about it, and like them, they have to kind of use a scientific method and think like, okay, what could that be? What could that possibly? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just like it feeds like the curiosity, and it's like when he goes out and says it, oh, a frozen cloud. It's just like, all right, you kind of you squash that a little bit. So
And that was the only thing the entire film that Kip Thorne allowed Christopher Nolan to do that was scientifically impossible was
oh
ice
yeah, yeah.
clouds. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I
Everything else
thought
was
about
based on
that.
scientific fact.
I can just imagine the argument. Chris is probably just like, please, Kip, because he has an American accent. Please, Kip, it'll look really cool, mate, if we do this. And Kip's
Why
like,
not?
sure, fine. Yeah. So then they're on Matt Damon's planet, which is an icy tundra, and like the days are 67 hours, and then the
Ugh.
nights are also 67 hours. And while they're there, Murph sends another message to Anne Hathaway saying like, "Oh, your dad's fucking dead, and also you're a piece of shit because you just left us here to die." And Anne Hathaway's like,
Yeah,
"What?" And Matt
the
Damon's
moment
like,
he
"Oh yeah,
came
I
up,
knew that.
the
I knew
moment he
that."
came up like and
Like, yeah, you
said
figured
that,
that
I
out.
I just kept thinking like, wait, did he just like that almost didn't add up. Like why if he knew that, why was he lying to them about it? Like
No, none of his decisions made any sense, and that's like my biggest problem with the movie. And I feel like right now, I almost feel like all of Matt Damon's part
yeah,
could have
I
been
mean
gone.
it could have been this, well, I don't know, because like you needed somebody who was for the opposite thing of what Coop wanted. So
Yeah.
like there needed to be some sort of
True.
quarrel there, but it is one of
It
those
just
things
didn't make
that's
any
like it
sense.
feels like he was there and that whole thing happened because it needed to push the movie forward, not that it was like meticulously planned. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, Carter. Like I think Matt Damon's part was like I was like something. This is weird. Like I get what you're doing, but I don't believe this character.
And
They could have made it so much. I feel like they could have just had someone on their crew who was like shade. I don't know, because then none like because Matthew McConaughey finds out, he's just like, "Oh, I'm going home," and everyone's like, "Okay, like cool, like we'll set that up." And then Matt Damon tries to kill him. He's like, "No, I gotta get off. I can't let you leave." And I'm just like, "Then just go with him. Like, just go. Say the planet's on it." Because he's like, "There's nothing on this planet." It's just like, just tell everyone that. Just tell
Yeah,
everyone
like
and
if it.
leave. I didn't
he
understand
had been
his
transmitting false
motivations like
information for
at all.
years just in hope that people would come to save him though. So I think it was more of a
Oh, that's
I
right. When he
think
was calling him a coward and stuff
he'd
like
been
that.
lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they call him a coward, and he would lose everything, like going back home. But the like utilization of that planet made it to
I'll take
where
that.
like Earth was kind of no longer an option anymore to go back to, because they eventually found out that that planet was bogus, and they had to go to Edmonds' planet, which was their last option because they only had enough fuel to get there.
Right.
Um,
But then, like when they get out, also
Uh huh.
Romilly. Am I saying his name right? Rim
Brimley.
Rimley. Oh fuck.
Rimley.
I don't know what's wrong with me. He dies. Um, he gets
Yes.
blown up. I guess. Like yeah. Like I
Yeah,
mean,
he
no, he blew
explodes.
up. Yes, of course. But like, why did he blow up?
Matt Damon, yeah, he
It's like
booby
Matt
trapped
Damon set it
because Matt
up or
Damon had a
something.
robot with him too. Another point
Oh,
to make.
that's
Name's
right.
Kip. And he was just like, "Yeah, don't touch him. He's decommissioned. Blah blah blah. Don't worry about it." And then when he starts poking around, when Rimley starts poking around for info, then it was like triggered the
It was
bomb
set.
that was set to
Yes,
explode.
yes, it was set to. Okay, that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a bummer.
I just thought all his shit was. I just thought all that Matt Damon stuff was so dumb because it's just like, oh, you're like this new, like you're gonna be a villain somehow, because you're this new character that's all of a sudden popping up and you knew about all this shit. It's like, oh, okay, and then he's trying to kill, and then he's like, hey, you know the last thing you see before you die, your kids' faces. That's because we humans have an instinct to survive. I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, like when are you gonna try to kill him?
I think it's
Yada yada yada. It was just so much. It was just waiting for his shit to be over, which took up like 20-ish minutes of the movie. Them just fucking around on that.
yeah,
in
like
fucking
the end result, like it did
Antarctica.
something to push forward, but it didn't really have any substantial meaning in terms of like what the film meant or why things were happening.
Yeah, because Matt Damon steals the ship, he goes into space, and then Anne Hathaway and McConaughey follow him in the other ship, and he tries to dock the Endurance ship, which can send him home, but he can't dock it, so he tries to
Yeah.
like do some half-assed sunshine.
Yes.
shit
That
and,
was
like,
pretty cool. That,
explodes.
like I did kind of like that. I was like how he was like mid sentence and it was just like nope, and then he just gets sucked out.
Like the absence of sound because
Yeah,
I
space is
know.
a vacuum.
I-
that
was
that
cool.
that I really appreciated. Like I really appreciated the accuracy of no sound. Although I thought it was funny that like oh they're being really accurate about having no sound in space. Yet an explosion can happen just as easily. I'm like no it can't. There's no fire in space.
I know. I was just like, I was very confused about that. I'm just like,
Couldn't there be
I'm like, this is where the fiction
partial
comes in.
explosions, like small ones that don't, because there was no like extended fire. It was just kind of like a little,
That's
and then like that
like
was it.
if it
Because
was
there's oxygen inside of like the actual part of the spaceship that exploded.
True.
I mean, maybe it went by too fast and I wasn't able to see it. But like I just remember there being like a light flash
Yeah.
and like their faces and like seeing it for a little bit. But if like that's something that you would need to be like get in detailed about that. But if it like explodes and immediately like collapses in on itself, then that's an accurate like representation
Yeah.
because it's the vacuum.
It
like,
wasn't at
sucking it
least like
out.
a Star Wars thing where there's just a giant fireball.
Oh,
in
yeah,
space
yeah.
Or anything like that.
Yeah, but
Um,
I did appreciate that any time that there was like a shot of the
then-
shot of space or something like that when they have those like really sick shots on the outside of like the of the shuttles and stuff, like the music, Hans Zimmer is like fucking incredible with everything he does. Everything he
Yes.
makes is gold, and so the music that going along with like the absence of space is like this is what you would feel like if you're in space. And I was just like,
and
it's just so
with Hans
good.
Zimmer specifically,
Yeah.
since score is my favorite part of film, this I think blew my mind. Hans Zimmer was not given any script to the film. Christopher Nolan
I
gave
read
him a
that, yeah.
one-page document and said, "Hey, this is what it's a space movie. It's got father-daughter in it. Go work your magic." And it has to do with like time and stuff. And then Hans Zimmer composed the entire film without even knowing what the film was really about.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's why he teaches a master class.
Masterclass. Yes. Continue.
So, so then, sorry, we should just
Yeah,
trying to
you're
get
good.
this. We're an hour in, so we should. And by the way, at this point in the movie, there's
Yeah,
still
but
like
but
40
but there's a
minutes
lot.
left.
There's like a lot
So
of
they
stuff
dock?
that like a lot of girth to it. That sounds really weird,
Yeah,
but like so like
so-
I understand like
know.
but it I
There's
feel
so
like
much-
we can squeeze through it. But even then, this is a
I-
3-hour movie, so we
I can speed through the rest of the plot and then we can save all notes for the end. How does that sound?
Yeah, we could do that. First, I just
Do it.
I one thing, the docking scene. Like when I was writing
Oh, yeah.
the notes, like I seen it before, and I remember like that sticking out the most. And I love the memes, of course, that come through it as well. If you haven't seen the Interstellar memes, they're fucking incredible. It's just anything that's spinning around like really fast, they play that soundtrack between the docking scene, and it's so funny. But that scene, like, I didn't write any notes for it. I just wrote it in all caps, bold, the docking scene, and I was like,
Yes.
that is a brilliantly edited, directed, like it. Everything is just perfect about that scene, where your eyes are just glued to the screen, and it's a perfect example of like crafting like a tense scene. So
Yes.
love it.
All right, go
I
ahead.
know,
No, you go ahead.
and I think it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Casey. Oh, I was just gonna say that adds to like my whole point earlier about like Matthew McConaughey hasn't really piloted in 10 years, but he just knows how to do all this
What?
crazy bullshit. He's like, we got to get our thruster spinning us at 68 RPM if we're gonna get up to this spin thing. All right,
Well,
all right,
I mean,
all
I kind
right.
of took that. It kind of goes along with like with what Dr. Mann said, where he's saying like, oh, you can't have Coop was like, you can't have robots doing these things, and Dr. Mann was like, robots can't improvise, and that was like an example of like Tars saying like we can't do this, and then Coop saying like no, we have to. Like it's gonna happen
I know
and
he says like
necessary,
it's
and
Yeah,
I'm
not
like
possible.
that
He's
was
like, no,
dope
it's
line.
that was a
necessary.
little
And I'm
bit of
like,
that
that's a
like
pretty cool
element
line.
of
That's
like
a pretty cool line.
of one of Coop's optimism, which he always has such a vast amount of optimism, and his curiosity, to be like, this is possible, like this is theoretically possible, so I'm just gonna do it, and it's like a bit of that recklessness of him. I don't want to say recklessness, but it's just like his curiosity leads him to be kind of reckless.
Bravado.
Yes, that's a much better way to say. Um, so I thought that was cool. I thought it was like a cool moment where it's just like, yeah, he may not have done it or may not be that good, but he's just like, I'm gonna do it anyways because that's the kind of person I am.
Because
So
it has to be done.
yeah, yeah. So that was a cool moment. Okay,
All right, so
continue on.
they get attached to the Endurance, which gives them ability for deep space travel again. So they get, in order to get to Edmund's planet, they don't really have enough fuel to get there, so they are going to use Gargantua, the black hole, as a slingshot to get there. And as they're like getting halfway around the black hole, then they're going to use the boosters from the ships and their last remaining fuel to boost out of its gravitational pull. But as they are passing it, they McConaughey knows this, but Anne Hathaway doesn't. That they have like too much weight to really get by, and they need to kind of go skeleton crew mode in order to get there. So they jettison one of the two robots they got, TARS, through the black hole, and then McConaughey also says like "Sayonara, Chiquita, I'm buzzing off," and then
I'm blasting out of here.
yeah, he says "Got a blast," and then he goes through the black hole.
Which that you know what? Sorry, speed through it. Speed
You're
through it.
good. Okay, so he goes through the black hole. Anyways, Anne Hathaway makes it to Edmunds' planet and sets up shop to start colonizing. That's the end of her story. And then McConaughey gets into the black hole, and then a lot of weird, crazy shit happens. Pardon my French, sorry. And then he kind of gets into this 5-dimensional spot that TARS starts to explain to him that he can see and affect gravity through time, because gravity can cross like the time space continuum. So he
And
goes into
love.
this kind of spot in this black hole where he's just kind of floating around, and there are a bunch of different bookshelves that he can kind of see kind of scattered, but it's the bookshelf from home where Murph's bedroom was. So we find
In
out that the
Murph's
ghost that was
room.
in Murph's bedroom that was giving off all these patterns and stuff and communicating essentially was really the future version of Cooper doing it through this black hole.
Which was
And
like what? Like when
which
seeing it
was
in theaters, I
crazy.
was like, oh shit! I was not
Yeah.
expecting that.
And then the conclusion of this communication was through a watch that was significant at the beginning because Coop gave Murph a watch and he also had a watch, and he said like, when I leave, like our times are going to change, but we'll be in sync with like this watch or whatever. So he communicates through Morse code on the watch that was left on the bookshelf, and Murph happened to be like going back in there and discovers it, and that's how she ends up cracking the real code of how to save
Yeah,
humanity.
because Tars was like programmed by Rimley, right? Rimley.
Yeah,
Okay, I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but it was programmed by him to like they were going to shoot him into the black hole, and so he was just like, oh yeah, while I'm in there, I'll try to gather as much information and beam it back to you. So like he ended up gathering data in a black hole, that was what they needed. That was what Murph needed in order to build that the solve the. I don't know what the gravity problem was called, like what the issue was exactly. They just kept calling it like, oh, there's this problem with gravity or something with the ship getting it
I
to
think
there.
it was like the ability to harness gravity, so that way they could, like, instead of having to use like rocket propulsion to get a space station that can hold humanity, that they just utilized like reverse gravity to get
Oh,
it away from
okay.
Earth. Yeah, that was like the plan A from the beginning.
Right, right. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Okay, yeah, that was like that was the only place Murph said it to Topher Grace later, earlier, where he was like, she's like, oh, like the information I need is in a black hole out there, but not really much out in here, and so
Yeah.
that's what inspired her to be like, I need to go back to my room where that ghost was talking to me.
hmm And
So
then
yeah,
McConaughey, after giving this off and Cooper saving the day on Earth or whatever, we find McConaughey kind of gets sput out back into the where the wormhole is by Saturn, and then he's just floating in space, and some like, I guess, space cops show up. They're essentially like exploratory scout vehicles from the space station that now exists over by the rings of Saturn.
it's Space
Um,
Force.
yeah, Space Force, exactly. And then they pick up McConaughey. He wakes up in the hospital, and they realize he's at a place called Cooper Station, and he thinks it's named after him. But then the doctors say it's named after Murphy Cooper, his daughter, and he goes to see her, who Murph is now like in hospice on her, like, 90 years old, 95, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
she's
She
she's
old.
like
Deathbed, pretty
she's like
much.
about
She's
to
old.
die.
Yeah, she went into cryo sleep for like 2 years just to try and extend it, but they woke her up when they realized they had him because she was holding out hope he would come back, and they got
That
to
oh
see each other and fulfill his promise that he made when Murph was a kid when he left, that he promised he would return.
yeah, that like yeah, it's sad like when Cooper's like crying on the video, but for some reason that is the line that gets me, where she's like, they didn't believe me, like but I knew you'd be coming back. She's like, and he's just like, how? And she says, because my dad promised me. I'm like, oh
Oh
no.
yeah.
That made me tear up. I was like, oh,
Oh yeah,
like
dude.
God, the
it
emotion was
hits
just
hard.
so,
Yes,
like, it flowed so well
yeah.
through them and through us.
And then, but my favorite part
I
in
know,
that
I
scene,
know.
she's just like,
Yeah,
okay,
immediately
now
she's
get
like,
out of here.
okay,
Like,
I saw you. Now please go.
Yeah. And then the ending of the film is presumably
yeah, she's
the
like,
rest
no.
of his extended family that was obviously very below him, like great grandkids, whatever,
Yeah,
surrounds Murph in the hospital bed. Cooper leaves to the spaceship to go find Brand, aka Anne Hathaway, who is colonizing this one planet to like go and get her essentially. And then the movie
yeah,
ends with a shot of her on that planet.
yeah. Which is like I guess like I remember when I saw this the first time, and like it shows like she kind of set up a little base camp type thing.
Yeah.
Was that um was that the base camp she set up, or was that like what Edmonds had set up? Like I okay,
I feel like it's what she set
Yeah,
up,
I
but
but
like
feel
isn't because
I wasn't
Edmund's
sure if he died
dead.
like from the crash
after he
or
set it up and stuff.
yeah or something. I don't know.
So
I
my thoughts on her setting it up goes back to Man's Planet because McConaughey Cooper says to Man, "We need to scout out 2 or 3 different locations to set up 3 different like buildings."
oh yeah.
And in the end, you see 3 different buildings right behind Hathaway at the end. We do find out Edmonds is dead, so
Yeah,
she
yeah, that
doesn't
was
get to be
evident.
with who she loves. But
Well, that's where
but yeah,
that's where Cooper comes in. You know what I'm
Which sucks.
hmm
saying?
they can repopulate the old-fashioned way.
Yeah,
Well, they have
Donald said
they
in
have
the
all those
beginning.
eggs. You know.
Exactly.
hmm
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah,
So
that was the movie. It was. I actually had to watch it in a span of like I started it late last night and had to finish it this morning.
yeah.
It's I don't know. I don't know why I felt like it was a lot longer. I mean, it is pretty long, but it's not like The Irishman or anything like that.
Yeah,
So
it's like 2 hours 48 minutes, but it's so gripping that it makes it feel a lot less than that.
yeah,
I think you're right, and they could have cut out different
I
things and
disagree.
edited it down to like a 2 hour film.
Probably
but
it's
I
like two
feel
and a
like
half hours or something. Two
yeah, I feel
15.
like with the density,
Not
yeah,
not even. I feel like
I feel like with the
2:15.
density of like the theory of relativity and how intellectually kind of complex a lot of these things were, that making it longer allows the general audience to take it in a slower rate and in a rate that they can figure it out
Hmm.
before the next big thing happens and then they're falling behind. So I
Yeah,
think it was appropriately paced,
For
but
sure.
I'm
yeah,
not saying that that's the 100% right way to do it.
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like I didn't have too much of a problem with the length, but it is after a while because of that, like what you said, like a lot of things. There's never really any like lulls. There's never really like downtime. You know what I'm saying? So you don't really think about it until you're like until you like look at the time. You're like, oh shit, this is like. No, it happened when I looked at the timeline of like where I was. Like I watched on Vudu, and when I see like, oh, where am I at in the movie? I'm like, I'm not even halfway. Like holy shit, like I didn't think about it, but I was just like, what, wait,
That's
what
how
else
I
has to
felt.
happen? I was like, there's the docking scene, there's the black hole scene, what else happens? Like I can't remember. So it it wasn't that, I wouldn't say that's a fault, but it is something that like that kind of, it makes you think about like why is it this long, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I don't know,
Um,
but
Hmm.
how does this, well, Casey, you said this is like your favorite Chris Nolan movie.
yeah.
Actually, I can't really ask. Carter, is this your favorite Chris Nolan movie?
Oh. I don't know, dude. Memento's pretty
Memento.
good, but I
Actually,
haven't seen that in a long
I
time.
watched Memento recently. It's pretty hold
I
up.
would say, I would say of recent memory, this is my
Okay.
favorite Christopher
This
Nolan
movie,
movie
this movie, along
of the
with
three I've
me
seen.
studying filmmaking, like this kind of was the spark that got me into wanting to learn about film.
Yeah, and
So
I.
this is kind of my sexual awakening of film artistry.
All right, all right. I
There
mean
you go.
that was signs for me. So you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Uh, so I understand.
yeah.
uh, but
Casey, what would you rate this
Um,
movie out of 10?
I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
okay.
Word.
Oh,
Nine what? Nine what's?
nine
Like nine
popcorn soda
gargantuans?
large
Nine.
combos out of 10.
Oh no. Well, I was gonna say like
Okay.
never mind.
Because you're either biting your nails or you're biting into a large popcorn.
I
So
give
there you
I give it six and a half
go. Okay.
all rights out of 10.
I was gonna say I give it a mm, I'll give it seven relativities out of 10. I don't
There
know.
we go.
That's my thing. Yeah,
All right.
and it's all just because like you know it's very intriguing. It's a huge spectacle, and it generates like the proper emotion, like what you said, Casey. But it's
Yeah.
like, but there are the verbal exposition, at least in my opinion, is something that like I that really irks me.
It knocks 3 points off your total for it.
Well, that and then like kind of thinking about some like Dr. Man's thing, like some things that like well, that kind of feels weird or something like that. And then on top of the like, I felt like Matthew McConaughey was like no one's performance like really outshined other than Matthew McConaughey's, which I guess didn't need to, but it was just like I feel like everyone was just like pretty, you know, standard. Like no one really like outperformed anything. But I
Yeah.
still like really enjoy it. I still like would watch it again.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just
And one last one last note on the Doctor Mann thing. He actually had another connection to Michael Caine. They both narrate a poem called "Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night,"
all right.
and Michael Caine says it as they're going to hyper sleep or whatever, and then Doctor Mann says it as he is about to like board the endurance in his mind he thinks he is,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
move.
that's right.
And that poem, the meaning of that poem is that the older they get, the older we get, and the more that we get closer to death means that we should fight death even more intensely and vigorously, which in turn gives us like a feeling of importance of being alive. So it's all comes back to survival instinct and that like rebirth like the Lazarus thing we've already mentioned and everything, and
Right.
that is the driving force for like Dr. Man. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with the actions he took and the
Hmm.
way he took them, with being alone for like decades and cryo sleep. And I
Yeah.
think the way he interacted in terms of loneliness and on the planet in this movie was much more accurate to what a human would react than the way he did in The Martian, where he was like a stand-up comedian for 2 hours, and that I think was terrible. But um,
That movie's
anyways, yes,
hilarious.
that's that little poem.
I love The
Both of
Martian.
them say, and it speaks on survival instinct, and that's where I think Doctor Man gets a little bit more. It's like the nasty side of humanity in times of terror versus the good side, which is
Right. Yeah.
them seeking out
And
stuff.
that and that's how I saw his character was like he was the opposing force of Coop's point of view and stuff. So it's like he's gonna have the same drive, but he's gonna have to do it. He's going about it in the wrong way or a different
Yes,
way, I should say.
exactly. Like an
So
antagonist instead of a villain,
yeah,
essentially.
I could
Yeah.
see that. I could see your point.
Hmm.
Um, well, all right. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to
All
touch
right.
on or any trivia things
I
or.
got three stupid little trivia things
All right.
that are interesting.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, and then this one here. So it was 16th. It's the 16th, tied for the 16th rated film on IMDb with 8.6 out of 10. Tied with Goodfellas, Silence of the Lambs, the original Star Wars, and Parasite.
Oh wow.
Um, it was the 10th highest grossing film of the year at 677 million worldwide. The number one film of that year was Transformers: Edge of Extinction. Um,
Solid. Solid.
they
What the
Jonathan
fuck?
Nolan, they
That's
utilized
embarrassing.
Wall-E and Avatar as inspiration because they were apocalyptic sci-fi films. So those two were used in the creation of this script.
Yo, Wally's
Um,
like fire though. You know what I'm saying?
oh, I know, right? And then Anne Hathaway got hypothermia while filming because on the water planet, Miller's planet, they were filming that in Iceland, so it was near freezing, and
Right.
she got a rip in her suit, and so water got in, and she couldn't leave, so she got hypothermia. Um, all of the robots, the TARS and stuff, they
Hmm.
were real robot systems. They were not CGI at all.
Oh
They were
yeah, yeah.
essentially
I
like
remember seeing that.
puppeteered.
I remember
And
seeing those.
then
Yeah.
the last thing I will
Oh,
say
that's
is
sweet.
all that corn at the beginning, the cornfields they used, they actually grew 500 acres of corn for the film, um, and they sold it at the end of the film and made a profit off it. So
I've heard about that too. I remember hearing about movie production
Hustle.
companies
Get the
like
hustle, man.
creating like almost like a side hustle on their projects.
exactly, yeah,
I know there's other productions. I just can't remember. There was like a little I think it was like a cracked podcast thing I listened to that talked about that, but I was just like that's genius.
yes.
So, all
Those
right.
are all my fun facts. I'm done speaking.
I,
Thank you for having
I didn't well, hold on. Jeez. Yeah, I didn't look up any trivia,
No
so
problem. Do
me.
you have anything you want to plug, Casey?
Follow,
Where are
like,
you on the social
subscribe
media?
at In Pursuit of Nothing. I know if you're listening to this, you've probably already done that.
I
I
mean,
have
who
nothing to
knows?
add in my personal life, so I don't need to plug myself.
We're
But
quarantined, so we're not doing anything. But that
All
IPN is what we're
right.
doing, and while we're still from home, so. Um, okay, well, I mean, thank you so much for bringing this. I actually really enjoyed watching this again. Because like sometimes I don't really watch movies until someone tells me to watch them again. So,
yeah,
so it was nice going back to this. But you can like Casey said, follow In Pursuit of Nothing on all the socials. Facebook, Instagram, primarily Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Carter. And then you could follow me.
You know,
Carter runs our IPN Instagram, so and then you can follow me at. You don't do the Instagram?
I don't run the Instagram.
Oh, I thought you were.
No,
Okay,
Aubrey does the
whatever. I
Instagram.
don't know.
That's
that's
why
fair.
she's always
Yeah.
I thought
asking
she was
what
saying
to
that about
post.
Facebook, but I don't know. Whatever.
Anyways,
You can reach me at Alex Pacillas on all the social medias. You can follow me if you want. I don't care. Do what you want.
Man, I can't
Well,
believe
'cause
you
you-
thought I was
you
running.
were
that.
for
I
a
was gonna be so
second.
mad.
The Twitter?
No, I wasn't. I'm just logged on.
No, did I say
No,
Instagram?
no, you said Instagram.
No, I said Twitter.
Yeah, you said.
No, whatever.
Anyway.
Whatever. It
I
doesn't
thought
matter.
you said Instagram.
It doesn't
Moving
matter.
Oh yeah, well I'm Carter WBT on Instagram. It's public now, but I'll probably go back to private.
Check
so
the
don't
IPN
get your
page
hopes
if you
up.
really care about finding me. If not, no hard feelings.
It's all good. All right. Well, that looks like that's a episode. Well,
Well,
thank you so much, Casey, for coming on. And
Thank
I'm
you
I'm
for
sure
having me
I'm
and
sure we'll
watching
do it
my
again.
movie.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do it again soon. And
no
Carter, do you
problem.
want to sign us out?
Oh yeah. So catch us next week where we talk about a different movie.
Thank you, everybody.
That's it.